All right. Hello, Thrift Boss Babes. I am here I call this my office. If you follow me on Instagram, I am at a Whole Foods. It's in New York City in the Lower East Side. This is where I spend a lot of my time because I can't afford a co working space at the moment. And so to leave my apartment and to just have some time away, I come to Whole Foods. And I thought, why not just do our Facebook Live here at Whole Foods? I have some Airbnb guests right now, and I wouldn't have had the same space anyway. So better at Whole Foods than my bedroom. But hey guys, we're just gonna wait here for people to enter, and I'm gonna get Emily on camera. I see Emily, you're here, so you're all good. I want to say a few words about Emily before we begin so that we don't see her blushing on camera. I first met Emily, I feel like when I was a baby, in around 2013, 2014. She had just started selling vintage, I believe, on Etsy, and we did. I used to do consultations on a platform called Pop Expert and also Clarity, and I would help vintage sellers with different issues, and then in particular with search engine optimization, which was really, really important for Etsy back then. It's still important, but I think it was even more important back then. And so we've kept, I guess, in digital touch here or there. And Emily, I don't know how you sort of reconnected with me, but it was just so lovely to hear from you when we did reconnect, and for you to tell me that now you're full time. And so I just love that. I love hearing that from 2013 until today, or when you went full time, you were committed, you were consistent, and you believed in the possibility of working for yourself. And I know we had an Instagram conversation, which was like, about the roller coaster, because it's a roller coaster. You don't have that comfort of like, okay, yes, I know I'm making this much today, so if I do a really bad job at work, it's okay, I'm still going to get paid, and I can kind of relax because I don't think my boss is going to fire me. It's not like that, because you are your boss. So I'm excited to welcome Emily. She is also going to talk to us about some really unique things. So if you're tuning in live or watching the replay, I really suggest that you hold on, you stand by to hear her. So she has an Insta shop. So she's going to talk us through that, the inspiration, how it works, problems, issues. She's also founder or co-founder, we'll hear more, of a vintage market in the Detroit area, which is where my grandfather is from, which is super cool. Haven't been out there yet. And then obviously she sells on Etsy, and I know she does an array of other things. And as I mentioned, is a full-time seller. So she's going to share with us her wisdom, lessons learned, so that you Thrift Boss Babes can have a little bit more insight into whatever it is that you want to do, what you want to create, so you don't have to make the same mistakes that other people have made. This is truly women supporting women. So I'm so excited, Emily. I'm going to get you on. Cross my fingers that everything is easy peasy. We did a run through this morning. She's going to come into my office. Welcome to my office, Emily. All of you, welcome to my office.
Hi.
You look beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I love your lipstick.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm at my office. I know you follow me on Instagram, so you know all about the office.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you just work from home, or do you have somewhere you go?
I work from home most days, but I do have a studio. It's kind of far away from
Ah.
me. It's like 45 minutes away from where I live.
Yeah.
But the rent is really cheap. So
Right? And you can just like get out of your home and not have a relationship with your home, as your
yes,
workplace, so you can separate.
totally.
Yeah. Now, really quickly, it's funny because I was looking at my questions and I'm like, there's so much I forgot to list here. How long have you been full time with Livin Vintage?
Actually, I was full time right around the time that you and I met. It was one of the first
Oh,
things that
okay.
I did when I took the leap to full time
Got it.
to really help, get me going.
Got it. Wow. So you've been full time for 7 years.
Yes.
Holy shnikes. Guys, this is even bigger than I thought. I thought Emily was going to be like, yeah, last year I went full time. Nope. 7 years. So I love this story because it's possible, right? And it's possible because
Totally.
you decided it was possible.
It's a lot of hard work, and I have
Yeah.
had a ton of help along the way, and really supportive, like friends and family and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah.
I
Well,
tell people I'm like totally unemployable now because I've worked for myself for so long.
it's the same with me. I'm like, I would be the worst employee.
Totally.
Like, people would be like, what are you saying? Anyway, I want to hear from the beginning. So, how did your passion for secondhand, thrift, and vintage and resale begin? And how did you transition into selling?
Basically, I've kind of always had a love of vintage. Like when I was like around 10 or 12 years old, I created an eBay account and totally lied and said I was 18.
Oh my
And
God.
I would buy like big lots of like vintage Barbies and for like one or two things. And then I'd throw the lot back up on eBay so I could like
No.
buy more stuff. And like my mom would have to take me to the party store to get money orders. Like this is like way before like PayPal, any of that
Yep.
stuff. So,
You are a gangster. Oh my
I
God.
mean, I only did it like a handful of times. Like it was fun to
Yeah.
really experiment with because at the time that was what I was like super into collecting was vintage Barbies.
Love it.
And my grandma was like kind of an older grandma. She had my mom when she was 42. So she was like born in the 20s and like she was just like the coolest person to me. So she's kind of one of the first people that really got me into vintage, like looking through her old pictures and just hearing about like her time, like in the
Yeah.
30s on her grandma's farm. So that's kind of like where I got started. And then when I was in college, I thrifted just to like, you know, because I was into it. I was really into vintage. I had like that's when like vintage fashion blogging was like really in. And so I had a blog. I wasn't very big, but like I enjoyed it. It was a hobby.
What was it
Um,
called?
it was called Livin Vintage.
Okay.
My name actually came from my live journal that I had when I was like 14. So I like needed a name for an Etsy account, and I was like, I just use this name. So
Love that. I had a
yeah.
live journal. I had something else and I forget what it was called, but it will come to me and I'll message it to you.
Oh, that'll be great because I love seeing those. Like, but it's so embarrassing now sometimes to like say my business name and people are like, "Oh, where did that come from?" And I'm like, I made it up when I was like a teenager, you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah,
I thought it was cool then, you know.
and like you like have to be honest, because you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, I was teenage. Like you can't even lie about it because it's so personal to you.
Totally. So like
Yeah.
sometimes I feel a little awkward about it because it's not like some, you know, like unique or like interesting name or whatever, but it tells you what it is. So I feel like that's probably pretty good, you know, like when you click on it, you know what you're going to, you know. Um so anyway, I would go out and I'd thrift and I'd be looking for myself and then I'd like find other cool vintage stuff and then I was like, you know, I could like throw this up on eBay and make a couple bucks or this is kind of like when Etsy was first getting started. And so I did create an Etsy account. I sold a couple things on there, just here and there. And then basically, when I graduated with my undergrad, the college I was going to gave me an opportunity to go to grad school, and they were going to pay for it. And so I was
Okay.
like, "This is great! It'll give me 2 more years to figure out my life." Because like I didn't know like what I wanted to do. Like I just picked a subject in school that really interested me, and I kind of wanted to be a professor. And then when I kind of got more into that, I was like, this is a really cool career, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
So then when I graduated grad school and I like really needed to find a real job, it was like the worst time. We were coming out of the recession. There were like no jobs. And I was like, you know, I'm already making money doing this, like a little bit here and there with, you know, just selling part time and, you know, just to make extra money in school. So I was like, what if I just take this year and see if I can do it? Let's just see if I, and my parents were like, you know, if you get in a bind, we'll help you out. Like, so they were like really supportive to like give me a year to see if I could do it. And I did it. And, you know, like they helped me with rent my first like couple years when I was starting out. But now, you know, I can pay for a studio and my car and, you know, all my stuff on my own. So I've really, with their help, like I was able to get to the point where I could be completely like self-sufficient, like
Yeah.
making this a living.
Wow. Okay. So what happened is between grad school, well, basically when you graduated grad school, you could have been like, okay, job, and you gave yourself your own job,
Yes.
or you employed yourself essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. Now, okay, so this was around 2013
Like
kind of thing.
2012, 2013. I
12,
graduated at
2013.
the
Okay.
summer of 2012.
And Etsy, I forget when Etsy launched.
I
Oh
think
seven.
in yeah, I think and I joined in '08 and I had sold on
Yeah.
there a little bit and then I like started to really take it seriously in like 2012, 2013.
Right, right. Yeah, it's funny because I was like, When did it? Because everything seems to blur together to me.
Yes.
It seems like things have been around longer than they actually have. The
Totally.
internet's still only 24, well, it came out before 96, but I consider 96
Right.
when it really emerged. So yeah, like 23 years old.
Yeah, we're
Younger
older
than
than the
us.
internet.
Yes, we are older than the internet. Okay, so you had talked about university and going to grad school. So I'm going to skip that. Um, we talked about your vintage brand name. So let's kind of back up for a second and sort of re-angle the question. I think that you've obviously, being in the industry as long as you have, you've met so many other sellers on Instagram, in person, on Etsy. We all know, like, Dear Golden, the best seller
Yes.
on, or
She actually lives here in Michigan.
I know. Does she live near you? Michigan's
Yeah,
pretty big.
like about like 45 minutes away.
It's crazy. Okay, so you know a lot about vintage branding. How has your name helped you? Because you did say really quickly, like, yeah, when people click through, they know what they're going to find. And what do you suggest to a vintage seller today? Because I don't know, have things changed? Like, is it better to have something that's kind of like random, like
It does kind of seem
tassels
like
and
that's what the trend is right now for like
yeah,
something that's random. Um, I think I'm just really self-conscious about my business name because I just like took something that I created when I was 14 and I was like, hey, let's go with this.
yeah,
And I feel like some people took a lot more time and thought into doing that. I kind of just wanted to like hit the road and go. And so that's something that I've kind of like changed as I've evolved as a business owner is some things I still do that way and other things I'm like, okay, learn from this, like, take your time, like, so, but for the most part, I do kind of just do it. And then I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out as we're like doing it.
yeah. And your branding is definitely very much on point with what you sell because tell us, I don't want to say exactly because I'm not quite sure, but you focus on older vintage, not newer vintage. And
Right.
you're,
For the most part, I try to focus on like sort of like the high point of the 20th century, which is like 40s through the 70s, in my opinion.
yeah.
But, I'll be honest, like that stuff is getting a lot harder to find. And the younger people, they do really like the 80s and the 90s. And even though like I totally lived through the 90s and all that stuff, like I am finding that there are some really cute pieces and I'm kind of slowly adding that in. That's kind of on brand for what I sort of feel like my girl is. So like I kind of feel like with a lot of vintage shop owners, they pick things that like they would like to wear.
Yeah.
And so that kind of is like what my brand is, I would say. I like things that are interesting. I like interesting patterns. I like things that have like little details. Really fun, bright, bold colors. Like I collected novelty prints for a really long time. So I think that kind of really goes along with like what but I also really like things that are tailored that have really intricate seaming and because I like to sew, so I can really appreciate some of that.
Cool. Cool. And what do you think? I don't think I put this in my questions, but besides 80s and 90s,
Uh-huh.
which thank you, Stranger Things, and just, yeah, youth culture, what is selling right now? Like, what, if you could find it, will sell fast.
If I could like go back in time and buy like 100 like 1940s cold brand novelty print dresses, like that's what I would buy. Obvious. I think that's kind of what everybody wants. I think like even if that isn't like an era that you really like, I think you can even if you like vintage, I think you can really appreciate how sort of cool a lot of those pieces are. So I would say that. I would say stuff that because a lot of the designers today are being really influenced by vintage pieces. I've had a lot of designers buy for me and then like rip the thing off and like put it down the runway, which
Right.
I think is really cool. I think that in a way it does help promote vintage like that's already out there. So like if you see this, for instance, like Anna Sui bought a jacket for me and she put it in her last collection.
Okay,
And
guys,
so
Anna Sui. She said that really fast, like super casual. Anna Sui. Look it up. Sui. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really cool, but I also think you can be like, look, like she took a 1960s jacket that was like knocking off Chanel and she like did it. So it's kind of like really meta. But like it's a
Yeah.
simple like like crocheted like jacket, and you could still find something like that at the thrift store or in a vintage shop, and so you can like
Yeah.
totally get the look of a designer outfit without spending all that money.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that. And I think, that's something that our Thrift Boss babes are learning a little bit more about, which is what I like to call the fashion food chain.
Hmm.
Of like, there's big fish, there's small fish, and it's okay to be a small fish and sell to a big fish because the big fish need you. And
Totally.
if you don't have the time and the energy and the branding and all that stuff to become a big fish, you can resell to the bigger fishes. So you resell to designers who will spend, right, a good amount of money. They don't
And I
really
would
blink an
say that
eye.
I'm like a middle fish. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I for a while, I think I struggled with that. I think everybody, when they get into this, they're like, oh, I want to be like the it shop. And like, yes, I would really love to be the it shop. But at the same time, like, I'm really comfortable with where I'm at in a way
Yeah.
where there's still room for me to move up. But it's cool. Like, I send pieces to New York and LA all the time. And I
Nice.
know that they're going to, some of the are just customers that just like to wear it. But some of it is going to like big stores there. And I think that's really cool. Like, I like that. So, if they're willing to pay what I'm asking for it, like, and you can get more money for it, more power to you. Like,
And that's the philosophy again that I encourage, where I'm just like, you know what? There's an abundance. Don't hold on to it because you're like, I want $40 more. Like, let it go. Now, let's talk about Etsy. We haven't formally, since the inception of Their Boss Babes, really dived into Etsy. And it's changed so much. We were just briefly talking about the history. So, okay, it's about 12 years old, 13 years old. People were complaining about it back in 2012. I can only imagine what sellers are saying now. So, how was your business when you were really, selling full time, and how has it changed? And what have you done to adjust so that you can keep swimming like a middle fish?
well, I would say the biggest change is that when I first really started to sell full time on Etsy, Instagram was just new. Like, it was like it was still like kind of coming along. People didn't really know exactly how to use it for marketing yet. A lot of people didn't have like those like beautiful, like curated, like landing pages on there. And I think that in the time that Etsy, some of the changes that have happened, and that a lot of us sellers that are maybe not too happy about, Instagram has sort of really risen up. And I think that that has helped a lot of people keep
Balance.
funneling, like people into their
Yeah.
stores and to beat the algorithm. But now Instagram's changed. So,
Yeah.
like it's a constant, you got to um, keep doing research, keep doing homework, finding out how to stay ahead of the algorithm. And really, I think it's just about the product. If you have got a good product and it's at a good price, people are going to buy it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because it's like, it's about me. It's not
Hmm.
about this. It's not about this external world. It's about my talent and my capability, and the right customer will find it. I love that. So, how much volume, like percentage, I'm throwing this in here, would you say you sell organically on Etsy up against all your other ways that you sell? Like, what's your percentage there?
It's hard to tell because Etsy doesn't give you really detailed analytics, or I just don't understand them well enough as a novice because I that's not my background.
Got it.
So it's hard to find out how many people are really coming there and making the sale because of Instagram. Like, you can see
Hmm.
how many people came from there, but you don't know if they're
Converting.
actually the one that bought from you or not.
Right.
Um, I would say that like right now I drive like 40 to 60% of my traffic. It fluctuates, on any given month. But I drive majority of my traffic. Etsy doesn't. I would say that they drive only 30% of my traffic most of the time. And then the other stuff is coming from, all of the social media work that I'm doing and ads that I'm doing and people finding me organically through searches and things like that.
Right. Okay, that's so insightful. So 30% organic. So guys, organic means people are on Etsy and they're searching for 1960s Chanel look-alike coat. And they find Livin vintage. And then the other percentage that you were saying, which is about 40 to 60, is basically because of the existence of Livin vintage, her posting, having 7,000 followers, people clicking through and seeing what's new in your Etsy shop. Now, do people DM you just to buy direct from you, or do you think they're more comfortable buying from Etsy? Like, what's the?
I mean, I get people that DM me all the time.
Yeah.
And I am a seller that doesn't really care. Like as whatever way you want to buy from me, like I'll sell you. Like I've like sold the dress off my back before, like I'm totally
Oh,
that
I love
kind
it.
of seller.
Yeah.
So, however you want to buy from me and like it's secure and like legit, like let's do it. That's kind of my outlook.
Cool, cool. So let's talk about your Insta shop. I'm so excited. I forget the name. Can you remind us the name of your Insta shop?
It's Livin Vintage Bargains.
Bargains, and that's the handle on Instagram.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so guys, if you go to just Livin, that's without a G, Livin Vintage
Yes.
Bargains, you can see what Emily has created. Now she launched it this year,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really excited to hear like why you're inspired to do that. Um, I think that for our Thrift Boss Babes, a lot of us want to sell on Instagram because we see it as like, first of all, easier, which it may or may not be. B, as like kind of as we were talking about the wild wild west, where it's not, it's not too competitive, and people are still
Oh, it's
engaging.
super competitive.
Okay, so how about you shed some light then, Emily? Why did you start this Insta shop? How does it work, and what are you selling, and how do you get it to work for you?
So basically, I launched it earlier this year. A vintage selling friend of mine has had really good success with hers.
Okay.
And she uses it as a way to like stock that she's had a while or stuff that like has little flaws that you just can't pass up. And because people are looking for a deal, there are a lot of customers out there that do like worn in or, mendable vintage. And so she really inspired me because we were talking about how much backstock we both have and how crazy it is. And she was like, you should totally do this. So I started it this year, and basically I'm just using it as a way to get sort of sell all of the stuff that I have that isn't necessarily in Etsy shop worthy. And so maybe it's like 90s says 50s dress that I just don't
Right.
really feel like fits in my store, or it's a 40s dress that's got some holes in it, so I don't really feel good putting it on Etsy, so people can get it for a deal. I would say the competitive part of it is the buying, from the buying perspective. People they want to know when you're doing your sale. They want a heads up. They want to be tagged.
That's good
Yeah.
for you.
So I'm still building mine. Mine's still really new. And I don't post to it as often as I should. That's going to be my goal for 2020, is to really amp that up. I just kind of wanted to dip my toe in the water this year and just sort of see how it goes. But I've done really well. And the friend of mine that inspired me to do it, she says sometimes her months on there are the same as Etsy. So, she works a lot harder at it. Hers is a lot more established than mine. But it was really inspiring to hear that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
totally copy you and, try
I'm
it out and see how
inspired.
it works.
I'm
Yeah.
inspired because I've been casually, and I say casually, selling on Instagram stories, and it's working. I'm just like, hey
Hmm.
guys, I'm selling this. Do you want it? And I'm like, oh, okay. So back to Insta shops, just because people are like watching or they might be looking at this Insta shop. Do you explain to us like how you post? Do you do 5 in a row, or do you just post randomly? How are you sort of structuring the shop?
Basically, how I do it is I pick a day that I'm going to do the sale, and I notify everybody. And
Okay.
then I just do the sale that day. Sometimes I've drafted all of the posts because Instagram lets you do drafts. And so I'll
Yeah,
just,
love
sit
it.
on my couch and just, do all that. Like I'll already have taken the pictures and just sit there and measure it and whatever. Sometimes I do it live while like the sale is going on and sit and measure and do that. I find that takes a lot longer. And so there's a lot more lull in between the posts. And I feel
Yeah.
like for some people that I think that works because people will sit and watch the whole sale. I kind of didn't want to do that just because me, from a buying perspective, because I do shop on Insta sales too. It's a lot nicer when everything's posted at once, in my opinion, because then you can go through and you can just be like this one, this one, this one, and you don't have to sit and wait there all day. So I think there's like pluses and minuses to both strategies. I think they both work. I think it just sort of depends on what works for you as a seller.
Yeah. I'm like thinking through it. I like the idea of just 5 at a time. Um, and like even if all our thrift boss babes want to start this on their personal pages, which may or may not be about your shop, you could say like, hey guys, tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm going to do an Insta sale. You'll see 5 posts come up. I'll put it in my stories as well. The first person, how do you do it? The first person to DM you or
Um,
pay?
Pretty much every person that has an Insta shop will have like a post about like their rules. And so for me, like you have to comment, me, mine, or sold, and then you
Yeah,
have to DM me right away with your PayPal info and your zip code.
got it. Okay, so zip code because of the shipping cost.
Hmm.
Wow, this is insanely insightful. Thank you. Okay, cool. So yeah, like I think it's such a smart idea, especially like what Emily's talking about is she's talking about like you might have items that are like not perfect, but if you are a true thrift boss babe, which we all are, we do not like leaving things behind in the thrift store, which even myself, it's a very hard practice. I've had to sometimes be like this because I thrift 3 to 4 times a week in my business. So, I'd be spending $100 a week if I allowed myself, which becomes $400 a month. So yeah, if you have some sort of inventory, as long as you're communicating honestly to the
Hmm.
consumer, I think that could be an issue where you just need to make sure people know that there's a hole in this 1940s dress. No, you're not getting this great 1940s dress for $30. It's not perfect. This is not that good of a deal. I'm assuming that you write everything out very correctly and just make sure that the buyer knows. But I could see it as being something that's like incredibly profitable, especially if your audience knows every week at a certain time you're doing this.
Yeah. And, right now I've been doing it like kind of once a month, but I've skipped some
Okay.
months just because I've been busy, but a lot of it too is I have a studio space and I am like running out of room there. So I'm like, I need to like go through here and
You need
like
an Insta
figure,
sale.
yeah, I need to figure out how to like make more room so I can buy more stuff. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So tell us, you had mentioned your friend, and you don't have to say any names that you don't want to like divulge here. But who are some Insta sellers like really crushing it? Like if you could be like, okay, go check out these girls just to see what they're doing, or guys.
well,
I
my
think
my friend that
both
inspired
guys.
me is Lily from Love Charles,
Okay,
and I don't know her sale like thing, but if you go to her like regular shop name, she'll have like the thing on there.
it's called Love
And then
Charles.
yes,
Love Charles. Okay.
yep. And then she also lives here in Michigan. She lives on the other side of the state from me though, so
Uh huh.
it's really nice. Like we can be friends because we're not like constantly running into each other all the time.
I
We
know,
probably
right?
still could be friends if we were though too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
I get it.
but and then somebody else that I think is like really crushing it on the Insta Shop game is Mayberry Vintage,
Okay.
and
Yes.
she
Yes.
also has that's like her main account, but she has like a sale account. And she's been doing like the Insta Shop thing, like I think like longer than a lot of us, and she's just so good at it. Like she like has like a totally streamlined thing how she does it, and so I would totally check her out too.
That's so awesome. And Coast to Coast Vintage used to as well, but she would send people to her. Oh no, she still does, but she sends people to her site. I don't think that
Uh huh.
she takes payment any other way. So this is awesome. So guys, if you're tuning in, I'll be sure to after the interview drop those handles so you can go check out those accounts, find their Insta account, and get some inspiration to see if this is something that you would want to pursue. So, okay, we're going to talk about this part-time to full-time journey because obviously you gave yourself a year. You said, okay, Emily, I'm giving myself permission. I love that you were very transparent, that you had some support because I think that's really important to share because we don't want people like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. And they,
Totally.
might need a little bit of a parachute. Um, but I think that along any journey, we make mistakes. I mean, so many mistakes. So, like, if you could go back to 2012, 2013 and do a few things differently when you were really deciding to make this work, what would you have done differently?
Um, a lot of things. I think I would have maybe given a little bit more thought to my name.
Okay.
I think I do genuinely like my name, but the problem that I run into a lot with it is that it's hard for people to understand because it doesn't have the G on the end of it. And so people get confused.
I did too. I thought, like, when I
Yes.
went to your Instagram, I was like, living. Oh, wait, no, it's Livin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like a big thing. But I just feel like at this point, like I'm too committed to it. And it is kind of a part of me, to be
Yeah.
honest. So I think another thing that I would do is there was like, so like 2.5 years after I started, sorry, there's like a notification that came up.
No
Um,
worries.
like 2.5 years after I started, an opportunity came to me to manage an estate sale company. And I had just moved out of my grandma's house that my parents were letting me stay in for free. And so I was like, okay, this will be great. I can get like stock for the store and I can like pay my rent and still do my own shop. And what I kind of found out is that for me as a person, that did not work out.
Yeah.
And so I did kind of have to like put my shop on the back burner for a while because I really enjoyed the estate sale business. Like it was really fun. I learned a lot. But at the same time, I realized again, like I want to be working for me and not somebody else. So that's when I had to make another hard decision. Like, do I want to go back to this career of selling vintage, or do I want to, move on and do something else? And when I got called back to it again, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. Like,
Yeah.
this is 100% like that thing they say, like, if you love it and you let it go and it comes back to you, like it's yours forever. Like
Did that.
that's how it is.
Yeah.
It's with this for me.
Yeah.
So
That's so cool. So I want to talk to you about the real estate business, but I feel like that's a conversation for another day because that's a whole other avenue. I said real estate business, estate sale business. It feels
uh-huh.
like real estate because it's like so many belongings.
Yes.
Estate sale business. That's another avenue of being a thrift boss babe. So I love this though about your name because basically what Emily is saying is that there's a psychology behind a name. It's not just like, okay, that's attention grabbing, but there's also search engine optimization to take into consideration. There's the fact that people are lazy, and of course, we're just going to think it's living. And we might get frustrated and not even try to search further, which is unfortunately a barrier. So you want to make things as easy for people as possible. So if you pick like a French name, that might be kind of hard, or another language in general. So just things to think about when you're deciding on the right name for you. Okay, so were there any obstacles that you, and if there were, I mean, please share, but was there anything that was like out of your control that was really a low point for you over the last 6-7 years?
I definitely think that when there's like swings in the economy that like in the stock market that has like absolutely nothing to do with me, I think that people just hear sound bites and then they get worried about like shopping. So I definitely see that as an impact. Like when the government was shut down, like I did not make any sales. So,
Really?
and I have like friends who are like tattoo artists and things like that. And
Yeah.
like they didn't make like a lot of like small businesses were hurt by that because, it's we're all connected in this economy, and
Yeah.
so like little things like that, like things that you think that wouldn't affect a vintage business at all because like I'm not on Wall Street, like I feel like I totally see little impacts of it here and there, not all the time, but like every like I have to say like a lot of my vintage selling friends, like during when the government was shut down, like none of us were selling anything. And we were all like talking to each other and we're like, have you made a sale? Like, it's been like 13 days. Like, I haven't sold anything. Like, what are we going to do? Like, and,
Yeah.
once it opened again, we all got hit with a ton of sales. So, it's crazy because you really wouldn't think it's like, related at all. But like, I'm
Right.
sure that there's government employees who buy from me all the time and I have no idea.
You're right. It's such a psychology.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the psychology of anything that happens in the news where, like, for example, myself traveling Europe, I was like, okay, well, Paris, terrorist attacks. Like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm nervous. There's probably
Uh-huh.
no reason to be nervous. And then I learned that statistically, the tourism to Paris has declined
Oh,
significantly since. Oh, no
oh.
worries. We're here. Okay, cool. I'm going to test to make sure that we're still
Are
connected.
we still there? I'm sorry. Okay, we're back.
Okay, we're back. We're back. We're back. Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry. Girl, It's technology. But
Okay.
yeah, I was just saying, like when I went to Paris, I learned that like their tourism industry has declined because of terrorism. People don't want to go. So yeah,
Wow.
that's a huge like wow. So thrift boss babes, if something is happening, and you're stressing about it and it's external, you're just gonna have to sit through it. Like there's nothing you can do. Um, but when it's fruitful, you make it work for you and take advantage and be grateful. Um, so let's talk about, speaking of grateful, have you had I mean, you've sort of alluded to obviously that you've been selling to designers and doing quite well beyond just like the general consumer. Do you have any miracle stories? Like, I don't know, a $3,000 purchase or something that you're just like, wow.
I have had one like really big purchase. It was like hovering around $1,000. And I was
Whew.
like totally just like it was like a weeknight, and me and my boyfriend are just like sitting on the couch, and my phone like cha-chings, and like every time it does, I like look at it still. Like I'm totally still one of those sellers that like looks at it, and so I look at it, and I'm like, oh my god, like and I like freaked out, and it was for
Yeah.
like a big movie production. And so they had bought like literally every bathing suit I had in my shop, and like outfitted their whole. So it was one of my first really big, because they do sell a lot to TV. And so that was one of my first really big things. And it was so fun.
That's so cool. I mean, let's talk about TV for a second because I feel like television is taking all the vintage
Oh,
and
totally.
movies.
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy. Have you developed any relationships personally where you can, like with a stylist, where they reach out to you personally?
I haven't, but I've really found through so many different productions buying for me that I think that they really just hire some people and have them scour Etsy and eBay and all the different platforms, and they just give them a credit card, and it's like, hey, buy all this stuff if you can.
Yeah,
That's how it seems to be like for me. Like I haven't directly worked with any costume designers or stylists. It's a lot of the people that are helping them out, like their assistants and things like that.
got it, got it. Yeah, so they're always changing. Okay, that
Hmm.
that actually makes a lot more sense. So, I had this vision of like, oh yeah, you know the head stylist of I'm trying to think of a show right now, like the one that's a TV show that's becoming a movie. Oh my god, from the 20s. Why can't I think of the name?
Oh, Downton Abbey.
Yeah, I'm like, the headset. No, you're right. There's like 12 people on that team. So, okay, speaking of vintage, which we've been speaking about the whole time, but you founded or co founded, can you correct me, a vintage
I
market?
solely founded.
Wow. Okay, why did you do that? And how has that helped your business?
So basically, in 2014, I launched the Ferndale Vintage Fashion Market, and
Woo!
yay! And the reason I did it is because that is when I really sort of saw the shows that were going on in New York and LA.
Yeah.
Um, like Manhattan Vintage. This is like, I think, either right before or right around a current affair started.
Yeah.
And there was this really big vintage show called The Cat's Pajamas that used to go around. And
I
they came to
loved
Detroit.
the cat's pajamas.
Yeah.
Is it no longer with us?
No, and they came to Detroit once, and I like went to
Yeah.
their show. I spent all this money. It was an amazing show, and like I feel as a native Detroiter that like we're like a real cool city. But like a lot of people don't really treat us that way, I think, because we're in the Midwest, and
Yeah.
we're in the Rust Belt and things like that. But every day when I'm out walking around downtown, I'm like, that girl looks cool, that girl looks cool, and I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
And so I was like, there's a lot of women here that love vintage, that love fashion. There's a
Mm-hmm.
ton of vintage sellers here, and there wasn't a lot of opportunities for me, and the opportunities that were available for me were like general like vintage shows. And what I found around here is that people didn't want to try on clothes at those kind of shows. They were walking around, they'd see a clothing booth, they'd walk right by because they're like, oh, this takes too much work, and all of that stuff.
Okay.
So I thought to myself, well, what if there was a vintage clothing only show that was like in Detroit? And we're like a mile right outside of Detroit. We're in this like kind of like hipster little town that's like right outside,
Need to
and
go.
and there's like for a long time, people used to call Ferndale like the gay capital of Michigan. Like, it's just like a
Cool.
really cool, like artsy town. So it's like, this is the perfect place to have a vintage clothing show because there's already a lot of people here that like it. And it's really close to downtown, so it can be like a Detroit show. And so there was this really cool venue that opened up a year before I started my show. And their whole idea and premise was shopping Etsy in person. So they had half handmade, half vintage people, and they had like a cool little like micro coffee shop. And it was just like they had taken this space that nobody could rent out. It was on the corner of a really busy intersection right in the heart of the downtown. And it's like a 10,000 square foot building, and they partitioned it out into all these little
Wow.
shops, and they had a big open space in the center that they called their event space.
Yeah.
And so basically, I just walked in there one day and I was like, can I talk to the owner? And he and his wife came out, him and his wife own it together. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I have this idea. I think it fits your business model. Like, I'll be honest, I've never done this before, but like, I feel like I can do it. And thankfully, they were like, let's do it. Let's give it a try. And so we did it. And there was only 12 of us the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And, we only did one. And now we do two a year. We do a
Mm-hmm.
spring one and a fall one. And we have about 20 to 22 vendors every time. And it's just like, it's so cute. Like when I go and drop off flyers, there'll be people that pick them up, and like I'll see like teenage girls and they'll be like, oh my God, they're doing the vintage show again. And like the owner of the place that I do it at, he calls them my
Mm-hmm.
fangirls.
Okay, this is so cool. So, Ferndale, just to like back up again, I love summarizing because I know myself. I like listen and then I forget. Founded 2014. You basically walked into an event space and said, okay, I think that this is where we're going to host it. You've been hosting it there since 2014,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you haven't
Yep.
moved. And you've grown from 12 to 22 vendors. How many people would you say on average come through the show now?
It's hard to say because when I was thinking about wanting to do this, and I knew that I wanted to pick a good location from the start, I didn't want to have to move it. And so
Okay.
that's why I picked the Rust Belt. That's the place that I do it at, because they say on their website that they have about 10,000 people that come through every weekend, and they're a weekend only
Wow.
market. They don't open during the week. It's just a weekend thing from Friday,
Right.
Saturday, Sunday. So I would say that we are a little bit busier. We probably see between like 15 and 20,000 a weekend. But that's over the course of the whole weekend. It's not like per day.
That's huge, though.
Um,
That's
yeah.
huge because the New York City market that I take people to, the last one, it's massive. It's on a good day is 7,000
Wow.
for one day. So I'm now wow. Okay, so you as the organizer, you charge vendors, correct? And then you pay the event space to have that space, and you take care of the additional advertising, I'm presuming. Those are
Hmm.
your main costs. What have you learned? I mean, I love hearing your career because you have a wonderful career in secondhand. You've
Oh,
not
thank
only,
you so much.
seriously, you've covered everything. You're a reseller of your own. You worked for an estate sale company, which is huge, and now you run a market. What were some of the things though that you still had to learn in order to really make Ferndale successful for the consumer?
I would say like everything. The
Okay.
first market, I had like no idea. I basically just like scouted out people that I really liked on Etsy, and I just messaged them and I was like, hey, I'm
Ah,
starting this market. Like, we're handpicking you.
yeah.
I kind of always sort of framed it that way because I knew that eventually I'd want it to be a juried market where people have to apply and we go through a whole thing so that it's a really well balanced, well put together show.
Right.
Um, I like didn't have a contract the first market, and I didn't have one for like 2 or 3 years after that. I just kind of trusted people,
Mm-hmm.
and that I learned the hard way that you can't do that. You have to have a contract, and I think the biggest thing for me, just as a person, the market has been really good for me because I'm like not a confrontational person. I hate having to like be the bad guy. And because I do it all on my own, there are moments where I have to be like, nope, I'm in charge. You have to do this.
Yeah.
And it's been really good for me as a person to like learn how to do that without like coming off as a bitch, like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. I
um,
think we as women we all relate to that. It is in our relationships, our family, our workplaces. But so how have you learned how to do that in a way that feels, I mean, feels firm, but feels right for you?
I think some of it is just getting older. Like I was 25 when I started this, and now I'm in
Yeah.
my 30s. And I think that just that mental once you cross over into your 30s, you're like, oh, I'm like badass now or something. At least it was for me. Like I wasn't going to look at it as like this like death sentence. So I think that just physically growing older. But I also think that I'm really lucky the people at the Rust Belt, the husband and wife that own it, I have been able to come to them because like they are like they are kind of like my business mentors in a way,
Right.
because they are a little bit further along in their business career than I am. And like his wife is a lot like me. Like she has that's a difficulty that she's had to overcome in her career too. And so it's been nice to talk to her about it and to just I really think that has helped me a lot, is like talking to other people, being like, this is something I'm not good at, help me,
Yeah.
asking
Great
for
tip.
help.
Great tip, guys. If you're not good at something, or if emotionally something's happening, that's why Thrift Boss Babes exists, because you have people who are going to be like, yep, I'm going through the same thing, or I've been there. Let me tell you, or maybe I've not been there, but I still have advice. And it's just like, it's like when you're having a bad day, you need
Hmm.
a pick me up, right? And it's the more you keep it in, you're like, it's gonna explode. So this is so cool. So you do one in the fall. So when is your next
Hmm.
date this fall?
It is September 19th through the 22nd.
Cool. I don't think anyone here is in Michigan. I don't know. Wait, is Trisha Baldwin? Are you in Michigan? Tell me. So my grandfather's from Detroit, but I haven't been there. And he was hired by Chrysler like way long ago and moved to Pennsylvania. So he's like a total Michiganian. Is that how you say it? Michiganian.
Michigander.
Michigander. Oh my God, I'm a
Yes.
Pennsylvanian, so I always add in at the end. So let's talk about like worst case scenario, and then I'm going to open the floor for any questions or for you to have last thoughts. You've been in the business long enough that you've had some roller coasters. We talked about the government shutdown. Like, what do you do when things don't seem to be working the way they were? Like, how do you handle that emotionally? Do you do something different physically? Like, let's say your sales were to plummet. What do you do? What do you do?
I do freak out. And
Yeah.
then after I give myself that moment to like freak out, I'm like, okay, you need to hunker down. You need to like just put up a whole bunch of new listings. And I find
Okay.
that it may not work that day or the next couple days, but eventually that like rush of like new things for people to search will bring people into your shop, will bring traffic in. Um, I find that there's like swings of like how people go and buying. And I think that a lot of that has to do when people get paid and, when they pay their bills. And so
Right.
I do kind of notice that like around the end of the month or the first of the month, there always is like a rush of sales. I shouldn't say always, but like there typically is. Like I know that at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, I will get at least one sale because there will be somebody who's getting paid and they'll have had their eye on something and they'll be like, okay,
Right.
now I can buy this.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's so hard. I mean, even myself, as we know, I run a tour business, so I changed the name, and I was like, yes. I've had I think one or two tickets sold.
Oh no.
So I'm sort of like, do I change it back? So tonight I decided to change it back. I'm like, I'm just gonna change it back. So it's hard. You're like constantly experimenting, and like at the same time, you don't want to like lose time, but you're still trying to move your business forward. Um, but you're right; it could have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
So today's literally the middle of the month, so it's like everyone's halfway through. They haven't even thought about what they're going to do. I don't know, for the fall. It's just there's variables that you just can't control. And I think what you're saying, what I'm trying to remind myself in my own business, is that you just got to sit tight and believe,
Mm-hmm.
and use your success in the past as reason to have faith. Because unless you totally drop the ball and like self-sabotaged, probably everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and like I'm like a spiritual person. Like I do
Yeah.
believe in God, and like I feel like he's never failed me before. So like as long as I
Love
put the
that.
work in, like, you know, like I have faith that it's going to work out. I kind of feel like that's how I live my life with everything. I'm just like, let's do it.
Yeah.
It'll work out, you know? Like
That's how I
what's
am
the
too.
worst that'll happen? It won't.
I'm
Like
like, let's try this. Let's just do this.
yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts, Emily? Like anything I haven't covered, or just like things that you tell new resellers when you meet them?
Um I definitely tell people that I don't think that selling vintage is for the faint of heart. Like, I think that, like, I was super sensitive as a person when I started out in this, and my skin has gotten so thick, let me tell
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Um, like, I happen to live in an area where there are a ton of other resellers. Like, Detroit is like, when I was in the estate sale business, like, us and Texas were the two biggest estate sale markets in the entire country.
Wow.
So we had the most sales every month versus like it was us or Texas.
Wow.
So that like creates a lot of competition. I've been at sales where people have pushed people down the stairs to get a vintage pair of jeans. Like it's not worth it to me. Um, but you know, so there's a lot of competitiveness in this, I think, and I think that if you focus on that, you won't be successful. I think that
Yeah.
you need to really just put your blinders on and just do you and not, you know, like if you want to be successful in this, you got to put the work in and you got to self educate yourself. I think that that's another really big part of this is, you know, like I pretty much, I don't have any other employees and I
Yep.
do hire like seasonal help for my markets. But so I clean everything, I source everything, I list everything, I photograph everything. So it's, you know, if you don't want to pay money for the services of people to do that, you have to take the
Yeah.
time to educate yourself.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I've taken a class at my community college on social media. It was like a, you know, working professional development course and it was like $100 and I like learned about all these things on social media that I had no idea about. So I think that like constantly, I think that that's like the educator in me, like the person, the part of me that wanted to be a teacher. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you got to keep learning, keep, you know, but I do really think that that helps. I think that it helps you sort of stay fresh. It helps you keep up on all of the changes that are constantly going on in the internet.
Yeah. They
So that
won't
would be
stop.
my biggest advice.
They won't stop, and I love how you like really keep it real. Yeah, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. And if you do something today, you are probably not going to see the results tomorrow. But if you stay consistent and like you said, continue to improve yourself, you are destined to be at somewhere on the top, right? Because like you said, um, there's going to be these big fish. But who knows what's going on behind the scenes, where they might have 5 people helping them, and that's also a lot to mentally and emotionally manage. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
figure out sort of like what works for you in terms of the consistency and the commitment, and how that can equalize, or not equalize, how that can convert to um, a living wage, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been so great, Emily. I love you. I love your story.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
seriously, like kudos. Julie Wallace. Hi, Julie Wallace. I think she's still
Hi.
watching. She says, I'm in Michigan. So, Julie, um, feel free to say hi to Emily or Google Ferndale, Ferndale Markets. It's outside Detroit. I would love if you guys could connect. That would just make my heart explode.
Yeah, that would be
Um,
great.
she's liking and loving this, so I have a feeling that this is going to happen. And gosh, if I can get out to Michigan one day, I will. I will get to Detroit. I will be there.
Oh,
Um,
you have to. Our thrift
and
stores are so good because I've like traveled the country thrifting and like
yeah,
I always am like, when can I get home to thrift? Like,
you're like, no, I don't need anything else. So awesome. So yay! Thank you, Julie. All right, guys. So I'm gonna say goodnight. This will be posted to the announcements, so you can watch the replay or go back and see what we said earlier. Since if you're watching live, you actually can't watch the beginning. And Emily is now a buyer in the group. So if you ever have some really affordable, awesome mid-century vintage, I'm sure that that's what you would prefer is
mhm.
mid-century. Feel free to let her know.
Yeah,
And
tag me.
that's what I love about this community. Is again, it's like it's a big, it's a food chain, right? So
Hmm.
some of you have access to things that other people don't, who are professional resellers and can make a little bit of money on your item, and you know what? That's okay. Like, it's fine. I'll sell you these earrings, and if you want to sell them for $100, go for it. If you can get $100, get it. I bought them from I'm blanking, Patty, for like $2. If you can sell them for 100, I'll sell them to you for 10. Awesome, we're good. So anyway, Emily, I really enjoyed this, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was so much fun.
All right, you have a great night, and everyone, you have a great night too. Ciao for now.
Bye.
Bye.